Good evening, dear colleagues. We continue our conversations in the frameworks of the Koine.Debates. Koine.Community is a platform bringing voices of philosophers to the wider audience. Freedom, solidarity, and humanity are in the focus of our attention. In the Koine.Debates, we usually discuss the philosophical topics. But today we have a conversation with the psychologists. It took several generations for the philosophers and psychologists to distance in the academic departments. In the end of 19th century, beginning of 20th century, we divorced. We created separate units in universities, and we distanced for good. For Husserl, for Wittgenstein or Russel, psychologism was a highly negative term for a philosophical idea or argument. Yet now we're back to interdisciplinary dialogue, and it is the concept of experience that is in the focus of our conversation. My today's interlocutors are Professor Shapiro and Professor Mecacci. They both are psychologists. Alexander Shapiro is an independent researcher since this year. He is a psychologist and a scholar working in the areas of theoretical psychology, personal psychology, and other areas of psychology and psychotherapy. Alexander has over 40 years of experience in research and teaching in Russia, Ukraine, United States, Norway, Switzerland, Hungary, Poland, and Croatia. It looks like all the globe. He's the author and co-author of around 250 articles. He also translated and edited many professional psychology books. Now he is organizing the International Research Institute of Personality Experience and Positive Psycholinguistics. My second guest is Luciano Mecacci, retired professor of general psychology at the University of Florence. Luciano has worked in the field of psychophysiology and history of psychology. He covered especially the history of Russian and Soviet psychology since he made his research stays in Moscow in early 70s in the Institute of General and Pedagogical Psychology and the Institute of Psychology of the Academy of Sciences. His last book on Besprizorные was the homeless children in the Soviet Union from 1917 to 1935, was published in Italian in 2019 and will be translated into German and Russian. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So my first question is to Alexander Shapiro. What means experience in contemporary theoretical psychology?
Thank you, Mikhail. And it's very interesting that psychology, as it is not old discipline. In the 19th century, it is in beginning, and there it was in the beginning like wound research was the first laboratory of psychology, and what they do in 19th century psychologists, they are mainly like now people name it like cognitive psychology. And it was a concept of introspection, the first concept of psychology, and they move from introspection to experimental psychology. And it was considered like big revolution in psychology. It was many approaches in this going to practice and going to experience, but it was experimental, not experiential, you know. And this is important, and everybody know about Watson and behaviorism behavioral psychology, and psychoanalysis who are fighting with behaviorism, but more or less they are dealing with cognitive things, and like in the first introspection, and they don't dealing this first psychologists, they don't dealing this concept of experience as it is, as a human experience. And I think it is not much research in this field. There is some, there is, but in the field of experiential psychotherapy, there is a lot of approaches in this. The most important I can name Carl Whittaker. It's psychotherapist in the field of family therapy in United States, and his approach is experiential and symbolic experiential approach. I want to mention right now this book who I translated from English to Russian. It's Dancing with the Family, and in English it's a symbolic experiential approach. It is visible, yes? Symbolic experiential approach. And my translation was Dancing with the Family, Family Therapy, танцы с семьей, семейная терапия, символический подход на личностном опыте. It's very interesting that I translated book 1995, and 2019 it was another translation of this book. But it's they make the translator, but I think she used my translation a little bit, but she translate like approach on personal experience. Family therapy is not in the center, but it's very interesting. It's very interesting, and it reflects what happened in the field of psychological theory, how psychological theory, how it connects to real language of people. Maybe a philosopher can help, because very often editors and popular writers think that psychologists using like bird language, you know how to say in English bird language, yes?
Well,
language is only understandable
yes.
of psychologists. But they want to the popular journal. Not only in Russia, but only in the West also. They make it simplified, and this is very good example on simplification and making some mistake with the meaning. So I just want to finish my little response. It means that there is not much research about experience, and we are looking for what happened in philosophy in for instance, your great book, Mikhail Minakov, about history of experience. We are very interesting to have it to connect it to contemporary and problem of psychology, especially of this kind of personality psychology, especially on the field of psychotherapy. Thank you very much. for your
Thank you,
attention.
Alexander. But before I will start responding like on behalf of philosophy, I wanted to ask Luciano if you agree that there was a lack of psychological interest to experience in recent century, let's say.
I can start from the situation in Italy. In the 20s, 30s, you see that Brentano lived in Florence.
Right.
So we had the connection with the Brentano school, Minon school, Graz school. So a first period of Italian psychologists at the beginning of the past century referred to the idea of experience, of a consciousness, and so on. This happened up to the 40s. Then we began to have the influence of behaviorism and the cognitivism. And we have had no more idea of what experience in the philosophical meaning by Brentano and the other, even if we have some good research on consciousness and related areas. So it is at the present moment we have in psychotherapy a phenomenological school coming from Jaspers, Heidegger, and other. And so, but this is not connected to the mainstream of Italian psychologists, now oriented to cognitive neurosciences. This is the point. So you both understand how we are distant. And I would like to add something about ličnostni opit Alexander referred to. I had the opportunity, I was lucky to have the opportunity to translate Russian books and to meet terms like переживание, like осознание. Right. We had not in our vocabulary. So I had the problems when I discovered that English translation, for instance, переживание, осознание, they translated directly with experience, directly with a consciousness. And so I tried to understand the meaning of this term in the Russian tradition. So I met this kind of discussion. I think that a first point is to be sure about the translation of this term. I think that for what regards Italian, French, where we have this philosophical tradition, no, of, for instance, hermeneutics, Gadamer, we have a good tradition in Italian philosophy, as you know, Mikhail. And but then, so we can find the references in this tradition. For what regards empirical or experimental or research, traditional research in psychology, I think there are problems. And there are problems that can overcome, I think, in the field, more in the field of psychotherapy, for the reason we can discuss later, if you like. Or
right. Well, here I would probably take the topic that Alexander raised about this personality experience, личностный опыт. For a long time in philosophy, we were trying to get rid of it. These personal frames were seen as part of the mistake. This is why empiricists from the British Isles were neglected in the continental philosophy. When Kant starts working with psychology, he tries to make it pure, so to take away everything that comes from real personality and makes it only these a priori structures. And a priori means something that does not depend on personality per se, on personal experience, on personal past development, individuationsprocess in terms of Jung. And then when Hegel comes in picture, he also he tries even to talk about experience as mainly experience of Bewusstsein, of consciousness, but this consciousness is the consciousness of the absolute subject, Subjekt. So absolute is not, well, it is an ideal, and it's an absolute personality, but this experience that absolute has is not a human personal experience. So in a way, throughout 19th century up until Nietzsche, we have kind of attempts of escape of a philosophy from the personality. And then Nietzsche suddenly brings it back. And with his influence and then work of the existentialists, it returns, the personality dimension returns into philosophy, although under huge pressure from the analytical school. The Anglo-Saxon philosophy will try to get rid of it again for a very long time. And then behaviorism, it was in a way this American way of dealing with, again, personal path, with strong Freudian influence, of course. But then it's a new way which was hardly accepted by the philosophy. Again, this division between philosophy and psychology departments was very strong in that respect as well. And it's probably only Sellars who will try to recombine and reconvene. He brings these tendencies in psychology and in neuroscience of that age together, and he brings in the human dimension as well. But still, if you look at what's happening with experience in philosophy in 20th century, it's mainly like the fight between those who tries to find pure experience as a place where human being and non-human beings and the world and the being itself come together. So in a way, experience is much bigger than a personality. This holistic approach of Quine was, in a way, a summary of the debate in 20th century, when he shows that experience is basically a network of meanings that were created by living personalities and the past personalities, the social stock of knowledge, the language itself, being part of this big network of experience. And then there's a front line where living humans meet the brute reality and create new meanings, new signifiers. And then this network, on the front line, they have this very recent, fresh events that they survived. Then there's something that was already experienced by generations before. And then in the center of this network, we have these strange mythical creatures. We have all the language of the literature, of the fiction, of Centaura, and so on and so on. So in a way, that was the history up until philosophy kind of got rid of the concept of experience. With Foucault, with postmodernist philosophies, it seems that experience is too big a term. It's one word that signifies too many things in the life of personality, in the life of the world, and for the topos of experience where everything meets with everyone. And this is probably why I think this turn that Alexander offers to return to personality and dimension of personal experience is a valuable lesson for philosophical department. Alexander, we don't hear you.
So Your question is, can you repeat your question?
So what lesson can you, as a psychologist and psychologist who works on a personality experience issue, can bring to philosophy?
Okay, so it's, thank you. It's very important, and we hope when we can bring something, but we have to have enough psychologists who understand philosophers, because there is some, you mentioned, Mikhail, that there is some tension between two fields. And psychologists, they usually want, most of them, usually want to just to read of philosophers. It is interesting, I don't know what about Italy, but in Moscow University, by the way, we have a few days ago, 55 anniversary of organizing two first psychological departments in Soviet Union. It was 1966. It was one in Moscow, another in Leningrad. So before it was not even departments of philosophies or psychology. And then psychology go by own way. But only in the times of perestroika, it was flourished, because they want to go to practice. And they want to go to practice, and they want to little bit read of philosophy. I want to continue about what was in when I was student of Moscow University, and it was a 2-semester course with seminars of history of philosophy. Of course, it was not go far away like in your book, Mikhail, but it was very deep, and it was good philosophers. There's two philosophers who was very close to psychological department of Moscow University. One of them was very important to me. I was close friendly relationship with Evel Vasilievich Ilyenkov. It is the first one. And was another was Mamardashvili, Mirav Konstantinovich. And I, by the way, I read yesterday, very interesting, it is in the Facebook, I didn't know this, but I understand that Ilyenkov was, how to say in English, opponent Mamardashvili, his
Opponent,
opponent of his first doctorate, кандидатская.
Right.
And of
Well,
course,
reviewer, then it's reviewer of the thesis.
yes. And and it was many seminars in the department, but then it was somehow bad sign to be close to philosophy, or even it's making faces where close, but it's not real. And this Luciana mentioned, the colleague who he devoted the article is Fyodor Vasylyuk, who unfortunately left us. He died and 4 years ago, and he was very deep in philosophy. If you read his book, Psychology of Experiencing, it's переживания, he translated this experiencing. But he has his own term to this, on way to this term, not very much based off philosophy. There's some psychological, phenomenological links of his research, but also was a Vygotsky theory and culture historical theory. And also he is close to, of course, you know, Shedrovitsky, Shedrovitsky story, and also here, and also some for him it was important orthodox philosophy, synergical philosophy. So it's
you mean
very,
Orthodox religious?
Orthodox religious.
Christian.
I
Okay.
mean, yes, but Orthodox anthropology, which is based on some philosophical approaches. So I think your question is how philosophers can use all this psychological research, and because not much research done, but of course this is all this field of psychotherapy and psychology of personality. It came very close to this philosophy of experience, not only traditional, but only a new one, like in your book Bataille, Benjamin, and Foucault. But nobody read this. We were with Luciano on this conference. I was presenting last weekend, and they said a lot of phenomenological oriented psychologists who are close to psychotherapy, but they are not dealing with newest approaches to philosophy. Maybe if they will заинтересует, they will
Or become interested.
of philosopher of a research. For instance, we have a book of Fyodor Vassiliuk in English, is published very close to when he appeared in Russia, 1984. It's very, and it says in English, but I not hear that somebody from philosophy read it. Of course, it's in Russian, in English, but nobody go deep to this.
But what would be the major argument? What philosophy could take from this argument?
I think there is something which go close to practice, to everyday life.
So everydayness. Okay.
And I wrote in this announcement of my workshop, one from my workshop in conference, that Fyodor Vassiliuk in 1990 it was organized organization meeting of first meeting of humanistic psychology, you know, this like Carl Rogers.
Okay.
And Fyodor Vasylyuk speak there, and he said that there is a big room, auditorium, a psychological institute, and he said that maybe people from Russia, from Soviet Union came to the big windows and they looking at us and they thinking how you can help them in this perestroika. You know, it was very important time to receiving help.
Yeah, it was a stressful time also, and that's the mission that he saw. Alexander, I would like to redirect the question then to Luciano. And my question is, how you think this hermeneutic philosophy and contemporary psychology come together and can be helpful in understanding what experience is?
I think that contemporary psychology, very close to neuroscience, has an idea of a subject, a kind of what you refer to transcendental, ideal subject, universal subject. We think, but we do research about mind. In the past, we said the computer, general network, without a reference to personal, to lichnosti dimension. And I think this is a great mistake, and we go back to early periods of experimental psychology, when psychology tried to distinguish by natural sciences. Now we are again in this mainstream. So I was influenced in my thought by Vygotsky, because Vygotsky, when he speaks, and there is the problem of translation I told earlier, when he spoke about consciousness, about meaning or smysl, znaczenie and smysl, and even here many problems in translation. Many times smysl was translated with the meaning, public meaning, no personal meaning. And so I think this connection between hermeneutic tradition in philosophy, and this trend in psychology we were speaking about, like Sasha referred to Vasylyuk and so on, is interested to give again the real dimension to the human subject. Human subject is not a general mind. Of course, there is an anatomical basis, a body programmed by, genetically programmed, but the personal experience in a social, historical, personal context. And you know better than me, you can explain better than me. There is the Dasein more than Sein. There is we are here in this context, and we have to study this. I think it is a problem in experimental, so-called experimental psychology, but not in psychotherapy, because in psychotherapy you find the problem. This problem you find direct suddenly, because you cannot speak with another mind as a general mind. You have in front of you that mind, that personality, that history, and you cannot avoid to refer to this dimension.
And here I would like to intervene and ask you two, and I will then try to give the answer from philosophical point of view. Do we actually deal in psychoanalysis with personality, but is it not a number of events?
No, I think about psychoanalysis that Freud and the followers had in their mind a general idea of mind, a general construct. The unconscious, that the laws of unconscious are the laws of a body, how to say, is an anatomy of a mind, divided in 3 parts and so on, but it's a general anatomy, general physiology. It's not possible to, you think today, psychoanalysis for an historian of psychology like me is an example of naturalistic psychological approach to the mind. No, what we are discussing today. Every man, every woman is an example of an ideal prototype, of a normal prototype. But what is this normality? And this is another problem, because when we speak about these issues, we have in mind we have in our mind the distinction between normal and pathological, but normal and pathological is a distinction again historically grounded, and depending on the culture. If you are in Eastern world, is different than in Africa, than in the United States, and so on. So I think this approach doesn't work.
Yes. Thank you for bringing this up. Yes, Alexander, please unmute yourself.
Yes.
Unmute yourself.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And I agree with Luciano that it's a naturalistic approach. But also I stress that there's also behavioral approach that's also naturalistic, but as the other way. If Freud took the psyche and the individual to the body, to some body functions, like sexual functions, so and behavior psychology. They working with the animals, and like Pavlov as well, this is the same approach, behavior in the essence. And they, what they are doing, they thinking that human behavior is the same like animal behavior in the essence, no difference, no qualitative difference. And I want first of all to refer for critic of both Freud and Russel and behavioral psychology, saying they are both naturalistic. And I have my own experience in my thesis, in my first doctorate. I'm analyzing contemporary social biology. It is a very popular approach of human sciences in the West. And there is some philosophers also more or less biologically oriented. And they are following. You have Wilson, Richard Dawkins, and there are some many others. And philosophers like Michael Hughes from Canada. He's the philosopher of biology. And there is, of course, I following Vygotsky, I criticize them, but I see that they catch the essence of life. Because even in psychology, in traditional psychology, what is the life is, how they defined who is alive. It's all these great psychologists do. the organism which is alive it is reactive to the environment. But according to contemporary evolutionary biology, it is not right. And sociobiology stress on this. The essence of life is reproduction of genes in generation. This is the essence of life. This is the goal of life. And it is good for all creatures. And of course, human being is exclusion in this. But what kind of exclusion? I think exclusion in the terms of personality, in terms, and I think personal experience, because all these non-human creatures, all of this, they have another kind of heredity base of genes. But human beings have a heredity base in culture. It's a Vygotsky point of view, and it's very productive. And even I like, and I put in this my early publication, this idea about immortality of gene makes in the non-human nature by, of course, but it's not in human being. Human being, his immortality and based on personal experience, which is not died when the person died, physically died. They have some possibility to continue in culture, in art, even in life of close people in the family and friends and blah, 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 blah. This is very important, and it's very important, and how traditional psychology, it's not go deep to the essence of life, and sociobiology make a challenge, but we have to criticize them for they have a lack of personal experience. Thank you, and sorry for being so long.
Alexander, here I agree that, well, I'm glad to see that for psychology, life is as big mistake or as big a miracle, an event that provokes for thinking as for philosophy. Because life is something that forces us to stop creating these divisions between normal and abnormal, pathological, as Luciano was saying, or experience, formal experience oriented on the past, or formal experience oriented on the future, as inquiry and pragmatism. Or we have different kinds of formalistic approach to experience, but life forces to return. And this is why in this history of experience, I finish it by showing that philosophy returns to the life, to the challenges, and to the uniqueness as the way to avoid both this universal subject and mind and transparency, or pathology with intransparency of it. And uniqueness is the third option. But at the same time, this uniqueness makes some strange, very strange influence. Yes. Well, for example, Benjamin, for him, uniqueness is not uniqueness of human being. Uniqueness of experience is not personal. It's interpersonal, which happens in the event. It can be, and it often is bodily shaped, this event. Or you just make a prayer at the bus stop and suddenly the bus appears. Or sometimes you have an idea and then a dancer embodies this idea much better than any language can do, scientific or natural. And so he's trying to reduce experience, also human experience, also personal, to these little unique events in which the miracle of life is showing itself, and showing it also as anti-scientific in many ways. Or another example, the second heretic in philosophy is Bataille. If everyone is obsessed, and he's writing it in the occupied Paris in 40s, and everyone is obsessed with survival, how to reach out to the real, authentic presence. This is the hermeneutical and the phenomenological problem. How to be in your life authentic, how to be present in this being at maximum as possible. And someone asks, why do we actually have to be present? I want, well, Bataille says, I want to be absent, how to reach out absence. And his internal experience is the path to himself, then deeper than himself, then to this absence. It's on the other side of where being and nothingness are divided. And that's another heretical way. And the third heretic is Michel Foucault, who is saying, well, this transgression is the way for human being to be. So in this transgression, we make experience and remake experience. And actually, when he comes up to this conclusion, he says, well, I myself disappear as soon as my book is done. It's the book versus experience. There are books versus doctrines, and they can last. But this is something what I invested in the being and thinking, and it is gone away. And it's in a way also immortal through mortality of the author. Author dies, but the experience of a book, of a philosophical thinking, continues living its own endless life. It's amazing how these topics interrelate, of what you say, what Luciana says, but at the same time, it kind of kills personality. Don't you think so? Luciano, then Alexander.
Yes, I fully agree. About the uniqueness of event, a personal experience, I would like to refer to a specific situation in Italy about psychotherapy. Why? You know that in Italy we have Italian language as an official language. Of course, in Florence, there is a coincidence between I was born in Tuscany, and so I speak the language, Dante language. But people born in South Italy, or especially South Italy, or North, they have two languages. The language of a family where they were born, and the official language at the school, at the university, for the books and so on. What happens when there is a psychotherapist and there is the client or the patients, as you prefer? A problem, because the Lichnosti opit Sasha referred to is in the first language of the first years of life. They verbalize, each one verbalize in their own languages, with the mom, with the mother, with the father, with the daughter, and so on. And so it's very interesting, I think, from philosophical point of view, about the language, universality of a language, how it was built, a common word, with a mediation between different languages, because usually the psychotherapist speaks Italian, usually, or he or she try. But usually, even if they try to speak both in Italian language, their inner word is in the original ancient language. So I think it's a kind of a philosophical problem for me. It's not only a problem of a practice in psychotherapy to overcome, but they built their inner world, their personal experience in terms of lichnosti. They built their personality, but their personality is in another language, not shared with, and I don't know if I am clear, because it's a specific situation in Italy, but I know very well. And I had the opportunity to speak about this problem of language. And so they create together something, a word that does not exist in their private life, personal life, and so. So what kind of a unique personal experience is always together with other people or with other pieces of the world and so on.
Thank you, Luciano. Alexander, I know that this topic is close to your heart, but my question is, do we have multiple personalities if we know several languages or use several languages? Alexander, please switch on.
Yes, yes, they say we have, but it's a more metaphorical point of view, and that is, of course, it's very interesting for me, and a few words why I interested in this language issue, going from personal experience. Oh, not personal. It's a not personal experience. It's a personality experience, because personal experience in English is referring to said just Luciana. There is language problem in this thing. Yes, in Russian there is a difference. Личностный and личный. In English there is not such differentiation, and we have to invent the word, the psychological term personality experience.
So what's the difference?
Yes.
What is the difference?
What is the difference?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Can you define it?
This is difference, but this is личный опыт. It's individual experience. There is nothing to do with psychology. It's личностный опыт. Personality is went to the whole field of psychology, close to philosophy. Right. It's not just a layman go on the street. It's some not as a Travis Smith general opinion, but this is so. But what I want to say first, that I mentioned the work of Carl Whittaker, his book. What he is doing, he is very paradoxical, and what he can do, he can say for family, no, I wouldn't receive if whole family doesn't come. He don't interested in money, he interested in the family as a whole will come. And also he used to tell everything for his experience to the family, thinking it's not dangerous, because all family looking, listening to him, and he said, okay, he is a fool and we can go. And he said, it's a great that they go out of my office. They have our own resources to deal with the issues. But it's not for all generation of psychology and psychotherapists to do this. It's very difficult, and he can tell them about his own suicide attempt, but it's not possible. But that is why I think that I can research with personality. This is the personality experience using this language thing, and I am like a polyglot, and I can also interested in this, and I can share and I can lead group with this. But I want to finish with referring to Lev Vygotsky in this, and I can say that his first book was psychological book, was Psychology of Art. It's very close to the art, to the literature, and this kind of things. And this is important to analyze this personality experience of author, of reader, of director of the movie who make a movie on the basis of this piece of literature, everything based of also of this personality experience. Also, I want to mention, and it is very close to expertise of Mikhail Vasilyevich Minakov. It's about political psychology. It's very important because, and then I try to think what can be personality experience. I think about the concept of choice. People have choices, and these choices, this not individual choices, not личный опыт, not personal experience, but it is personality experience. It takes all the situation of this person, his or her family, his culture, his state, and all the generation. It's very complicated, and he make also political choices, not to take part in any election, for instance, is also the choice, and it is important in this country. So I think it's important. I hope we can somehow be in contact and continue this theme.
Yes, you're right. We are moving to the conclusion of our conversation today. And I would like you gentlemen to offer a 2-minute summary of what would you advise to your philosophical colleagues from the other department? What and where can we actually find a common place for conversation, for better understanding? Luciano, could you please start?
I think that, okay, right. I think that a philosopher could help the psychologist in being aware that consciousness, emotion, all these issues belong to a long tradition and cannot be considered like res, in Latin res, a reification of these terms. I am looking through the brain, where is the conscious, where is the emotion? For us, I too have a philosophical background. So, but I think it's very difficult, the cooperation today, because the Department of Psychology, at least in Italy, but I know in other countries, are distinct without any philosophical background. So, for example, conversation like our, because we share some common points, some basic background in philosophical questions. But if you put together a contemporary philosopher about consciousness and a psychologist or neuroscientist, the dialogue is not possible. I refuse to go to these kind of meetings because the language is not the language, the background is, they don't think that the consciousness is something that belongs to a tradition or with a different and so on. So I think we have to continue to this kind of discussion where there is the opportunity, but I find it very, very difficult to pursue.
Thank you for being honest, Luciano. I also feel some internal resistance to certain theories and the language, actually, the psychologists use. Alexander.
Yes, I think that I agree with Luciano, but this theme is very important, especially of post-Soviet space, and because people from the West, some psychologists came and teach some different approaches, and people, it's not possible to orient in all of this. And people here in Russia really need philosophy to have some gestalt of kind of approaches, and to make this individual choice, like what very important for very concrete work. It's also problem of schools, they also fight each other, schools of psychology. So philosophy can be an integral factor of psychology just to survive and make good science and good practice. This is what I want to say about this.
Thank you, Alexander. You are of very high opinion of philosophers. Well, today we basically witnessed that there are differences of perspectives, not only languages, of different disciplines, schools. And in philosophy, narrow-mindedness persists as well. It's also like school, it depends on schools. However, there's one idea in hermeneutic philosophy, the fusion of horizons. So the productive dialogue between different departments can happen if we may try to have a conversation, for example, in terms of discussing uniqueness, discussing personality, discussing experience in many different ways. But here, the topic would need not to differentiate, but show where the perspectives can overlap and how life can return to academic discussion through these overlaps. Thank you very much for today's conversation, gentlemen, and I hope we will continue some other day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mikhail.
Thank you. Thank you.